The certified letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, slipped through the mail slot of my downtown office like a viper sliding under a door. I picked it up, noting the return address, Grandview Lake Estate Homeowners Association. My coffee went cold in my hand as I read the contents. Final notice of violation. Property at 1247 Lakeshore Drive. Fine, $100. Failure to comply will result in legal action and potential foreclosure proceedings. I leaned back in my leather chair and laughed. Actually laughed. The sound echoed to my empty office, bouncing off the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city. They had no idea what they'd just done. Let me back up. 3 years ago, I inherited a substantial sum from my grandmother, a woman who'd spent her life quietly accumulating real estate. She taught me one crucial lesson. Land is the only thing they're not making more of. So I took that inheritance, and I bought things. Lots of things. Apartment buildings, commercial properties, and yes, an entire lakeside development called Grandview Lake Estates. All of it. Every single lot. Every common area. Every inch of shoreline. I owned it through a web of LLCs with names designed to be forgettable. Sunset Holdings, Lakeview Properties Group, Cascade Investments. The kind of corporate nomenclature that makes eyes glaze over during title searches. I kept one property for myself, the crown jewel, a $5 million mansion right on the water. Custom built, imported Italian marble, a boat dock that cost more than most people's houses. I registered it under my personal name, just another homeowner as far as anyone knew. I even paid the HOA dues every month, for $100 automatically withdrawn like clockwork. The HOA formed shortly after I acquired everything. The original residents, about 30 families who bought their homes before I purchased a development, wanted community standards. They elected a board. President Richard Whitmore, a retired executive with too much time and an inflated sense of authority. Vice President Susan Chun, who treated HOA meetings like criminal trials. And Treasurer Dale Murphy, a man who'd never met a rule he didn't want to enforce with religious fervor. I attended exactly one meeting, sat in the back, said nothing, and watched them debate for 45 minutes about whether fences should be 4 feet or 4.5 feet tall. I never went back, but I watched from a distance. I saw the fines start rolling out. $50 for a garbage can visible from the street, $75 for a basketball hoop, $200 for Christmas lights left up past January 15th. They were drunk on their tiny slice of power. These people who'd probably been pushed around their whole lives and finally found somewhere they could push back. Then they came for the Hendersons. Maria Henderson was a single mother, a nurse who worked double shifts to keep her modest 3-bedroom home. Her crime? Her lawn had brown patches during a drought, and her mailbox had a small dent. Total fines, $850. When she couldn't pay immediately, they added interest, then late fees, then legal fees when they sent their attorney after her. Within 6 months, they'd filed a lien against her property for $3,400. I watched Maria break down crying in her driveway one evening as Susan Chin stood there, arms crossed, explaining that rules are rules. That's when I decided to conduct an experiment. I wanted to see how far they'd go, how drunk on power they'd become. So I stopped maintaining my mansion. First, I let the lawn go. The manicured Kentucky bluegrass grew wild, then went to seed. I watched from my downtown loft as Richard Whitmore drove by 3 times in one day, slowing down each time to stare. The first notice came within a week. Polite but firm. Please address the lawn situation within 10 days. I ignored it. Next, I removed the shutters from the front windows and left them leaning against the garage. I let the boat dock's canopy tear in a windstorm and didn't fix it. I parked an old pickup truck, perfectly legal but decidedly not in keeping with aesthetic standards, in my circular driveway. The notices came faster. The fines escalated. $100, $250, $500. Each letter more threatening than the last, the language shifting from the community concern to legal consequences. I attended my second HOA meeting on a humid July evening. The community center was packed, the air conditioning struggling against the body heat of 40 angry homeowners. Richard Whitmore stood at a podium like a general addressing his troops. "We have a serious problem," he announced, pulling up a photo on the projector screen. My mansion filled the wall, looking admittedly like hell. The crowd gasped. "This property is destroying our home values. This is exactly why we have standards." "Who owns it?" someone called out. Richard consulted his papers. A Mr. James Patterson, who apparently believes he's above the rules that govern his community. I raised my hand from the back row. Every head turned. "I'm James Patterson." The room went silent. Susan Chen's mouth actually fell open. "You live there?" Richard sputtered. "I own there," I corrected. "Whether I live there is my business." "Your property is a disgrace," Susan Chen hissed. "You're bringing down everyone's property values." I shrugged. "I've received your notices. I disagree with your assessment." Dale Murphy stood up, his face red. "Then we'll foreclose." "We have that right. You owe this association over $2,000 in fines and fees." "Actually," I said, pulling out my phone and checking my records, "according to your last notice, I owe $100. The rest are pending penalties that haven't been finalized." "Semantics," Richard snapped. "Pay the fine and fix your property, or we'll take legal action. We'll take your house if we have to." I smiled. "Go ahead." The room erupted. People shouting, demanding, threatening. I stood up, buttoned my jacket, and walked out while Richard Whitmore pounded his gavel. Try to restore order. 3 weeks later, they filed foreclosure proceedings. Their attorney, some kid fresh out of law school who probably charged them $5,000 to file the paperwork, sent me official notice. I had 30 days to pay the $100 fine plus their legal fees, now totaling $7,800, or they'd auction the property. I didn't pay. The auction was scheduled for a Saturday morning. I arrived early, dressed in jeans and a t-shirt, and sat on the steps of the community center. A small crowd gathered. Bargain hunters hoping to steal a mansion, neighbors who wanted to see the troublemaker get his comeuppance, and the HOA board dressed like they were attending a funeral for their enemy. Richard Whitmore stepped up to a small podium they'd set up outside. "We are here to auction the property at 1247 Lakeshore Drive due to unpaid HOA fines and fees. The opening bid starts at the amount owed, $7,800. I bid $7,800. Called out a man in an expensive suit, a real estate investor, no doubt, who'd done his research and knew what the property was worth. $8,000, said another voice. $10,000. The first man countered. I waited. Let them have their fun. The bidding climbed. $15,000. $20,000. $25,000. The real estate investor was sweating now, realizing others had spotted the same opportunity. $30,000, he said firmly. Silence. People looked around. "Going once," Richard said, barely containing his glee. "Going twice." $100. I called out. Everyone turned. Richard's face twisted in confusion. "I'm sorry, what?" I bid $100. Your opening bid was the amount owed, which according to your original final notice was $100. Everything else was added by your attorney as legal fees, but those fees were never approved by a vote of the full association as required by your own bylaws, which I have here. I pulled out a printed copy. Article 7, Section 3. The HOA attorney went pale. He pulled Richard aside, and I watched them have a frantic whispered conversation. Susan Chin joined them, her face turning from tan to white to red in rapid succession. Richard came back to the podium. "There's been an administrative issue. The auction is postponed." "No," I said, standing up. "You filed a foreclosure. You set the auction. You established the opening bid amount in your legal filing as the original fine, $100. You can't change the rules mid-auction because you don't like how it's going. That's called fraud." More whispered conversations. The real estate investor was arguing with Richard now, pointing out that he'd been prepared to pay real money. Finally, Richard returned to the podium, defeated. "The property goes to Mr. Patterson for $100. The crowd erupted again, but this time in confusion and anger directed at the board. I walked up to the podium and handed Richard a check for $100. I believe this settles my debt. This isn't over, Susan Chinspat. We'll find other violations. We'll make your life miserable. I smiled. Susan, I don't think you will. I pulled out my phone and opened my email, then turned it around so the board could see. This is from my attorney. It's addressed to your attorney. It contains documentation proving that Sunset Holdings, Lakeview Properties Group, and Cascade Investments are all wholly owned by me. Those companies own every single property in Grandview Lake Estates, except for the 30 original homes. They own the community center we're standing in front of. They own the lake access. They own the private roads. I watched the color drain from Richard's face as he understood. As of Monday morning, I'm dissolving the HOA. State law allows it with approval from owners representing 80% of the property. I own 87%. The HOA will cease to exist. All fines will be voided, and all liens, including the one you place on Maria Henderson's home, will be removed. Dale Murphy found his voice. You can't do that. We have a charter that requires property owner approval to maintain, which you no longer have. I pocketed my phone. Oh, and one more thing. I'm selling all 30 of my investment properties, the ones I don't personally live in, to the current residents at 20% below market value. No HOA. No ridiculous rules, just people owning their homes. My attorney will be in touch with each of you this week. I started walking toward my car, then turned back. You all had the chance to be reasonable, to treat your neighbors like human beings instead of subjects in your little kingdom. Maria Henderson worked herself sick trying to pay your extortion, and you threatened to take her home over brown grass. You chose this. As I drove away, I watched in my rearview mirror as a crowd surrounded the HOA board, and for once, Richard Whitmore had no gavel to pound, no podium to hide behind, and no power left at all. The mansion? I renovated it completely, brought it back to glory. I kept it exactly as beautiful as it was meant to be, not because some HOA demanded it, but because I wanted to, because that's what freedom looks like. Choosing to do the right thing because it matters, not because someone threatens you. And every time I pull into my driveway, I think about that $100 check and smile. Best money I ever spent.